HostBridge will get you from this to something that looks like this, or talks to other applications behind the scenes. Maybe it has no presentation layer. But that's what we do, and that's what we're going to help you do. All right, so let's go to the slides. Okay, so the problem is you got these old applications that run on the host, and you've got tens of millions of dollars invested in them, if not more. And to change them costs millions more. And to migrate off the host, oh, you could get 20, 30 million easy. But people don't want to use those old interfaces anymore. They want to use something new. They want to use, well, not new anymore, right? They want to use a web browser. They want to use applications that run on the desktop. They don't want to have to take weeks, months of training to be able to learn how to use a 3270 application. Some of our customers, they take 6 months to train some of their operators. They want to use a web browser, something that's more intuitive, something that's easy to use. And they don't want to have to change their applications to do it. Now, this is the only architectural diagram I'll show you as part of the slideshow today. And really, this covers all the main components, at least from a high level. HostBridge runs and resides entirely inside of CICS. Nothing has to be installed on desktops. Nothing has to be installed in the client. Coming directly out of the host will be the web services that your applications can talk to. And you don't have to make any changes to those applications on the host. So HostBridge is running right next to your applications. Nothing between HostBridge and your applications. We're all running in the same environment. HostBridge is a well-behaved CICS application. Your CICS systems guys would install this just as they would any other application. Nothing tricky about putting it in place. It only takes a couple of hours. It all starts out here with the client, though, right? You got somebody that wants to access business processes on the host. They want to be able to add a customer, or they want to be able to adjudicate a claim. They want to be able to interact with those applications, but they want to use the client that's on their desktop. With that, we flow to the web server, the application server in the middle tier. You know, your .NET, your J2E, your Oracle application server, whatever you happen to have in the middle tier. And from there, you're going to have a request that flows up to the host. Now, if you were using a screen scraper, the interaction has to go between the host and the middle tier repeatedly, over and over again, to be able to walk through each one of those screens. And a lot of times, HostBridge gets compared to screen scrapers. But the problem is that that's not how we operate. You don't have to send one request up to the host, get back a screen, and then send the next request up to the host to go to the next screen. With HostBridge, all that interaction takes place inside the host. So we have this interaction that talks directly between HostBridge and the application itself, so that we're able to walk through all of those screens, those transactions, to be able to do that business process, whatever that is, add that customer, adjudicate that claim. Operators have to walk through dozens or sometimes even hundreds of screens to complete certain business processes. With HostBridge, you send one request up to the host with all the data necessary to complete the process, and HostBridge does all of that interaction between the client and between HostBridge and the host. And it only sends back just the response that's required. So if it walks through all those screens, it fills in all those fields, it takes care of any errors that may creep up, any problems that might occur. And you do that by writing a process automation script running inside of HostBridge. Now, we chose JavaScript because it's the most popular programming language in the world right now. There's more people that are writing in JavaScript than any other language. And it's an easy language to learn. So we have a JavaScript engine running inside CICS. Not JavaScript out here in the middle tier on the desktop, but actually running inside of CICS. So that we're able to write JavaScript and then compile and save that JavaScript in the host, and then it interacts with those applications in the host. And I'm going to show you how that works in a few minutes with a live demo. HostBridge not only, HostBridge not only can go at the applications, we can also go at the data as well, directly without going through the application. Sometimes you need to be able to read data off of a vSAM file or go to DB2. A lot of validation data is in tables or in files on the host. And what do I mean by validation data? Well, if you type in the wrong thing on a field, it comes back and says, no, that's not the correct value. Well, in a web world, we want to populate a drop-down box or radio buttons or check boxes. We don't want to have to send the data up and find out it was wrong and then send it back. We want it to be validated right there at the desktop. Well, with HostBridge, we have the ability to actually get that data out of DB2 or VSAM or wherever it might reside and send that down to the client, down to the application server so that validation takes place before it ever goes to the host. Of course, we can read any sort of VSAM file or any DB2. You can also do updates through HostBridge directly to those files, but we always recommend that you don't. You go through the business logic to do those updates on your files and your tables. You know, we're often compared to screen scraping, and even some of our customers think of us as a screen scraper, even though there's no 3270 terminal involved, even though there's no VTAM session. We're interacting directly with the application inside of CICS. But there's lots of problems when it comes to screen scraping, and one of the biggest problems is it's just very complex. And because it's complex, there's lots of places it can break. Also, because it's complex, it scales very poorly. We have, HostBridge has customers doing 20, 30 million transactions a day through HostBridge. They run their business through HostBridge, very large organizations. So we perform very, very well, and I'll show you that as part of the demo as well. But another problem is with screen scraping is it breaks so easily. It breaks because it's reliant upon screen geometry. You know, it's reliant upon a field being at a certain location on the screen. And with HostBridge, we don't suffer from those problems because we use a real field reference to be able to access that field on the screen. Very often, it's the field name the programmer chose when the application was written on the host. So if the application gets updated, those fields get moved around on the screen, they keep the same field name, we don't break. That means you can add fields, delete fields, as long as it's not a field that you're using in your application, you know, in your web applications, things continue to work. You don't have to recompile HostBridge or make any sort of adjustments. So HostBridge tackles all the problems that a screen scraper had, and we make it faster and more reliable. What do we integrate with? Well, anything. As I told you early on, you know, nothing of HostBridge has to be installed in the client or in the middle tier. So we talk to anything. And as part of my demo, I'm going to show you interaction directly from a web browser to HostBridge, as well as Microsoft Excel. More typically, it's going to be WebSphere, .NET, J2E, Oracle Application Server, or something along those lines. But I like a nice, simple environment so I can show you what's going on behind the scenes. We're a firm believer in standards across the board. In transport, in protocols, we allow you to decide what you want the input and output to look like. 10 years ago, it was XML and SOAP. Today, it's much more often we see JSON and RESTful type services. We also believe in standards when it comes to the development environment. Eclipse plugins from HostBridge allow you to explore your application, write your scripts that do the interaction for your business services, test those services, and deploy them into your environment, all from an Eclipse environment. And I'm going to show you that as part of the demo as well. The demo environment today, well, first off, everything is live. Nothing is canned or recorded. Everything you're going to see is real time. I'm using ZOS 2.2 today and CICS 5.3, although we've got 5.4 in-house, and we're already beta testing and working with IBM on 5.5 as well. And I'm not using RDZ today. I have used RDZ in previous demos. Today I'm just going to be using straight Eclipse. And I'm going to be using Microsoft Office 2016 Professional. Parts of this demo on the spreadsheet parts was developed on actually Office 2003 of Excel. So it's nothing special. It's about Office 2016. This is just regular Excel. And again, when I show you the Excel stuff, nothing had to be installed on my desktop to make that work. It's just Excel and HostBridge running on the host. Okay. So let's take a look at the application I'm going to be talking to first. And let me stop my slideshow real quick. Okay, so let me back out of my application here and launch it. So this is a really simple trader application. It was written by some IBM junior programmer 25 years ago as a demonstration program for CICS. And in this application, you can see I got my 4 stocks. But you know, I got that 4th one down there. Now, I modified this program because I wanted to show you something that HostBridge can do that I really haven't touched on at this point. You know, I've talked about the outside world being able to get access to those business processes inside the host, those transactions, applications, data inside the host. But HostBridge also has the ability to make outbound calls. Now, this is a standard COBOL program, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go into W just for a second, and I'm going to put in a zip code. This is where I'm currently located, if I could type. And it immediately comes back with the weather conditions where I'm currently located. Now, the speed of that is something that's it's amazing. I mean, I wrote this and I still find it to be very, very amazing how quick this is. Let me do a couple of other ones here. Now, each time I do this, I'm making an outbound call to the outside world. The way this works is I'm doing a standard link inside my COBOL program to HostBridge. HostBridge is making an outbound call to Yahoo Weather, getting back the current weather results as a JSON document. It turns that into a COM area and passes it back to this COBOL program, which then displays it for me. So again, the speed of this, these are real, this is live data. This is faster. I can get it faster by typing in a zip code than you can go by going to the website. Now, obviously, in your applications, you don't need to get the weather. You don't need to get weather inside your applications, but you do need to be able to integrate with other applications in the outside world. You need to be able to have your Oracle application server get updates when they occur off your host. Be able to push data live out of your host to other environments, real time, no nighttime sync. You know, no scheduled updates across between systems. It happens live directly at your host when the update occurs. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let me walk through this application really quickly, and you can see how it works, and then I'll show you how we can automate it and what it looks like. All right, so I've got 4 stocks. I'm going to pick KC Import Export, and I'm going to go get the real-time quote. Now, you can also see back here that I've got also buy and sell shares. I'm going to go to real-time quote, and there's values here that I might want to use in some other environment. I might want to use these on my web page and be able to display these as some sort of data for my customers. But they don't want to log into this. They want to use a web browser. Now, I'm going to show you an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to also show you what it looks like in a web page as well. But first, I'm going to show you the Excel spreadsheet, because everybody understands Excel, right? It's a real straightforward environment. Now, this spreadsheet, I never save it, so all these numbers are out of date. My KC Import export numbers is 1959, I believe, there. So the first thing I do is get authentication between me and the host. And I'm going to do that using the standard Microsoft methodology of setting up a basic authentication header to HostBridge and getting that authentication to take place in the background. Better type in my password. There we go. Now, that authentication was a standard basic authentication header. Now, as far as CICS is concerned, I'm me, James, and I'm logged in with my user ID and my password. And this means that I have all the same security in place, auditing, and logging that you would have if I logged in through a terminal. Nothing has changed. As far as the host is concerned, it's still me, and as far as the host is concerned, I'm still logging in through a terminal. Now, I don't have an active terminal session. There's no session in flight right now between me and the host. All these services that I've written here that this Excel spreadsheet is using are atomic in nature. Now, I'm going to show you the services, and I'm going to show you the data stream in a few minutes, but I want to show you the front of glass at first. So, if I want to be able to get the real-time quote for my stocks here, let's count how many that is. So it's 1 to start trader, 1 to stop trader, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for each one of my stocks. So if I want to get the real-time quote for all 4 of my stocks, that's 16 transactions plus the other 2, 18 transactions in total to be able to get the real-time quote for all of my stocks. So to extract this little bit of information right here, it's 18 screens I've got to walk through to do that. Now, if I click refresh right now, it instantly comes back with the same numbers that you saw on the 3270 screen. And I just went through 18 screens in just that one moment. Now, I also added the ability to do buy and sell on my little spreadsheet here so that I can say I want to buy 1,000 shares, and I'm going to click buy, and I think that's 5 transactions to buy stock in one of my companies. And you can see my count over here went up to 23. Now, I didn't link my buy button to my refresh button, so this didn't change. So I'm going to click refresh, and it went up. If I buy another 1,000 shares and another 1,000 shares, and I click refresh again, I just executed 69 transactions on my host, 69 screens. I've changed the total look and feel of my application. And I did it in a standards-based way where I can use the same web services I created that Excel is using here. I can use that in my browser. So I can come over here and get the same sort of data. Let me refresh this because those numbers are out of date. And there it is. Now, I changed the interface on this one, and I did link the buy and the sell to the refresh to the buy and the sell. So if I click a little plus here, I can buy 100 shares in all 4 of my stocks and click execute, and it did just that in all of my stocks. And the response time that you're seeing here is very, very fast. So I just executed 34 transactions when I bought shares in all of this and I refreshed this. 34 transactions I walked through. That's an average of 27 milliseconds per transaction. Now, for you guys with big boxes, that's a long time, 27 milliseconds, but I'm running on a tiny box. I'm running on an emulated a ZOS system, which is less than 100 MIPS. Running in your environment, this would have been sub-millisecond. So this is very, very fast. We're able to walk through lots of transactions very, very quickly. So I've got a standard web service interface on my application now, and I can do anything with that application and still do it with my credentials and my security. So I've not bypassed anything. I mentioned earlier I can also set I could go through DB2. I'm going to change this to 1,000 days. I'm going to get 1,000 days of IBM stock out of my DB2 database on my host, and I'm calling a web service again. So I click refresh, and boom, instantly it comes back. I was able to get 1,000 days worth of stock data pumped into my Excel spreadsheet here with no DB2 client, with nothing installed except Excel on my desktop. I can take this spreadsheet and I can mail it to other people in my organization. They would have to authenticate with their credentials, with their authority, and they could pull data straight into their spreadsheet. I also said I could go at VSAM files. So I have a little KSDS VSAM file, a little key sequential data set. I'm going to shorten my key, say get data, and immediately comes back. Now I had to read actually 3 VSAM records for each row of data that's here. There were 3 VSAM records read. I can go directly at the data. I can go directly at the transactions. And the organization of your environment on the host, if you're using MRO and you've got lots of regions out there running, HostBridge can be installed in one region or many regions, and it can use MRO to reach across and execute transactions in any environment wherever it's at, as long as there's an MRO connection to that environment. So we work well within your organization's design for CICS. We operate as a well-behaved CICS application. So we can reach across and run those applications, get that data wherever it resides on. All right, so I've showed you a little bit about how the interactions work. I've showed you what the front of glass looks like. Let me show you what the development looks like and show you what that interaction looks like that's actually being sent up to the host and what's coming back. So the actual service we're running is this one called template. Before we do that, let's step back. Let's do this first. How do I interact with my applications on the host? How do I write JavaScript and compile JavaScript and run JavaScript on my host? How do I deploy it? Well, let's just write something really simple. So there's a hello world script, and I'm going to do a right mouse click, and I'm going to say execute, and it wants my credentials. And down here below in my console window, you can see it says hello world. Well, that did not execute on my workstation here. That piece of JavaScript was sent to the host, to CICS, to HostBridge. That JavaScript was compiled, syntax check compiled and executed, and the results of that execution was sent back to me here. And if I want to turn this into a deployed service, all I got to do is say make instead of saying execute. It's asking if it's okay to replace what's on the host. I'm going to say yes. That service was now deployed. It's deployed on the host. Let me make sure I know exactly where I deployed it to, because I didn't check this earlier. Okay, and I can actually turn around and I can run that service. There's my service. It's deployed. It ran on the host. Now, obviously, in my little hello world, I'm not executing any transaction or accessing any data, but this is the service we were running with the Trader application just a moment ago. And there's about 2/3 or maybe even 3/4 of white space in here because I have lots of comments. And in this one script, I have 480 lines. So there might be 90 lines of code actually in here, maybe 100, not too much more than that. I can take this script and I can run it just as it sits. I can just do a right mouse click and say execute. That script was sent to the host. It was syntax checked, compiled, and executed, and the results of that execution actually came back here. This is the same results we were seeing before through the Excel spreadsheet, through the web browser. All of it's the same because I'm running against the same application on the host. And it sent back XML. And that's what my Excel spreadsheet is consuming. That's what my web page is consuming, is XML. It could have been JSON, or it could have been whatever style you'd like, you know, a SOAP document. All of those things are acceptable on both ends as input and output for HostBridge. So HostBridge allows you to create your services very, very quickly. You're able to write these and create services very quickly to interact with your host. Now, I'm interacting with my application on the host, and I'm filling in fields on the screen and extracting out by field name. Remember I told you that we use a real field name to bind to that data that's on the host. This right here is a field name. Now that field name was probably chosen, like I said, by an IBM programmer 22 years ago or so, whenever they wrote this application. Now how am I supposed to know what this field name is? Well, we've got tooling that shows you. I can actually come down here and explore my application. Now this looks like the 3270 screen that we looked at a few minutes ago, but it's not. This is HostBridge talking to your application, and it's sending XML back to my Eclipse plugin here running on my desktop, and there's enough information in that XML document that it can actually turn that back into what the 3270 screen looks like. Now that's not the typical interaction you have with the host. Normally, you only send the data up to the host to run your service and get the data back that you need. But I wanted to be able to recreate the screen, so I had HostBridge create this full-blown document that describes all the elements on every screen. And I can use that to walk through these screens and be able to see what everything looks like. So on this screen, there are these, 6 fields. Company 1 through 4, option, and MES 2. Those are my fields. And if I don't know where MES 2 is at, I can click on it, and it actually will highlight it there for me. Or I can click over here where the field is, and it will show me what the field name is, if I can remember where option was at. Oh, there's option. So if I click on company 1, 2, or 3, it tells me what that field is. And I can navigate through this just like I would if I was sitting in a terminal. So I'm doing exactly the same keys, PF keys, clear keys, etc., and I can walk in and see what these fields are. So if I want to know what fields I'm looking at, I can just click on them, and there they are. And there's the MES3 field that I was setting on my JavaScript a minute ago. It's this field right here. Actually, I was getting that field, not setting it. Now, when I get done walking through my application, and I go to close this out, it actually saves that entire interaction. Now, I can use that then to go back and walk through my application offline. So I generally have a domain expert, somebody who really understands the application sitting next to me if I'm running a web service. And I walk through the process with them of whatever business process I'm going to write the web service for, record the entire thing. I have all the messages. I have all the field values I filled in. I really want to walk through those situations where things go wrong with the expert. If error messages occur, what those errors are, so that I can capture that information and write my JavaScript to allow and to react to those messages appropriately. So here's all the screens that I walk through as part of that. All the field names are still here. All the data that I entered on each screen is here. All that's visible and available to me. So I've got tooling that allows me to explore the application, to create the web services, and I've got tooling, some of it open source, that allows me to test my services. We've recently began using in-house a lot of Postman to be able to test our services after we've written them. In fact, we use Postman to actually test the interfaces to HostBridge itself. Since not only do we use published web services for people to interact with their applications on the host, but the interface to HostBridge itself is a web service, and we can test those interfaces as well. You know, in the process of being able to develop and create the web services, all of those things is another web service that we're using to talk to HostBridge. So you can use your open source tooling to be able to test your services, or you can use some HostBridge provide tooling to test those services. This is actually the web service we've been running, the one for the Excel spreadsheet, and this is a web page as part of the HostBridge distribution. I can actually send this to the host and get back a response, and this shows me exactly, again, the same information we've been looking at all along, of what's going into HostBridge and what's coming back out of HostBridge. And if I've turned debug on, I don't know if you noticed back here, but I did have this little debug on. I'm passing to my service, to my script. If I turn debug on, I can actually see every screen that I walk through, values that I've set, XML documents that I've been using. All of that's part of the data stream that's in my debug. And I'm able to view that all through this same interface. And I can actually do the same thing through Postman as well, where I can view this same debug data stream. So we give you the tooling to be able to create the services, well, and to understand your application, then debug and deploy those services. And this process is very, very fast. We're able to create services in days, not months or years. And if you're dealing with common area programs as opposed to screens, we do that as well. We allow you to interact with any of those things that the CICS does. In fact, kind of our tagline around here is we allow you to integrate with anything inside of CICS, whether it be an application, data, or even a CICS API. Now, I went on a long time, and I have not paused to see if there's any questions. So let me just stop for a moment and have Farrell unmute the phones, and let's see what kind of questions you guys might have.
Okay, the phone should be unmuted.
You guys are being too nice to me. I'm the vendor. You get to beat me up.
Hey, this is Eric Peterson from St. Louis. I'm not sure if there's anybody else on, or if is there anyone else on besides me?
Well, there's lots of people on. I don't know if there's anybody else from St. Louis, but there's lots of people on.
Okay. All right. Cool. I wasn't sure because I don't see anybody else on there from USPS. But so when you were talking about MIPS, are the transactions, are they pretty much one for one as far as MIPS are concerned, or how does that work? Are there any additional transactions underneath?
Well, yeah, of course there are. I mean, nothing's free, right? for HostBridge to be able to interact with your application, we have to, HostBridge itself is a transaction. And so HostBridge gets launched, and then we launch your transactions underneath. Now, for each interaction where we execute a screen, generally it's one-for-one, right? Every time you hit the enter key on a terminal, it's a transaction. And for the most part, it's going to be one-for-one. HostBridge adds like 3 or 4 transactions on top to be able to do authentication, credentials, and to start your transactions. Now, HostBridge does have the ability to run on a zip processor. And now the zip processor is off your GP. Off your general purpose processor. So when we talk about, the increase in load your mainframe might see, or the increase in CPU utilization, HostBridge can all be offloaded to a zip processor. 99-point-some% can go to the zip processor, and it does not have to run on your GP. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious about that.
Sure.
Next question. So security, I mean, it's basically using its rack up behind the scenes. Is that how that's working?
Well, we don't change your security model. So whatever security you have in place today, it's the same security that you'll be using when you use HostBridge. When a request flows in, many customers want to send individual users' identities in because they still want the same auditing and logging going on. And you can do that. That's fine. Other customers want to use service IDs where they're doing the authentication on the front, in front of the web server already, and they've got network credentials that they're authenticating people with. And so when they talk to the host, they're going to use a service ID, a common ID for the request they flow to the host. And that's a common use case as well. But now there's a third case, which is called trusted hosts. And a lot of people want to use individual user IDs to do the authentication of the host because they want the auditing logging to be right. However, they've already authenticated their clients on the web server with network credentials, and those credentials are very often not the same as their host credentials. And in some scenarios, they don't even know what their host credentials are. And we can use a methodology called trusted host, in which case they still authenticate with whatever credentials they want on in the web server, and on the back end, talking to us, they send us just the user ID they want us to run under without a password. And we can do that because we have a secure connection between the application server and HostBridge. We've authenticated and have an authenticated encrypted connection there that allows them then to say, okay, I trust you. You go ahead and send me the user ID you want me to run under, and I'm going to run under that ID without authenticating a password. And in that scenario, you kind of get single sign-on, right? They sign on to the outside world, and then they're going to get their credentials passed through to the host without having to pass a password because, like I said, the password is almost never synchronized with the host, and the credentials sometimes are not the same as well. In those cases where the credentials aren't the same, they do a lookup in Active Directory or some sort of LDAP server to find out what their host credentials are and use those for authentication. So from a security standpoint, nothing has to change on the host at all to use HostBridge. There's no additional setup. We're using whatever security mechanisms you have in place, whatever security you already have on your application. All of that still works just as it always was designed to.
So that trusted source scenario, are you guys using some sort of GUID or some sort of token then? Is that what's going on there?
No, we have what we do is we have we do not do tokens because under web service authentication mechanisms, you're supposed to send credentials with each and every request. So what we do in this scenario is we have an authentication of the actual web server to the host. So there is an authentication and a channel that takes place there. And then what is sent to us as part of the data stream is the user ID we want to run under. And at execution time, whenever the service starts, we'll launch the web service under the supplied user ID as opposed to the identity that's the web server.
Okay. Got a couple more questions. Sorry.
Sure.
So I think you touched a little bit on the transport mechanism. So it's HTTPS, the handshake between HostBridge and
it's whatever you want it to be. It's,
okay.
By that
so you
I
can
mean
configure that.
Well, yeah, because Many people do not run HTTPS on the host. They don't run SSL on the host because encryption is kind of expensive, and if they don't have an encryption coprocessor, it adds cycles to the host. And very often, the host and the web server are all in the same glass house and all have the same security wrapped around it, firewalls, etc. So they're co-located, things like that. So it's often not necessary to do SSL between the host and the client. So a lot of customers don't run SSL, but that's your decision. It's up to you. You can do SSL, you can do X509. It's up to you to decide how secure you want that channel. You can also talk to HostBridge not just by HTTP, but also if you've got an MQ, you can talk to HostBridge over MQ. And just about any transport that you want that the host is capable of sending and receiving, you can talk to HostBridge with. But all of this, both the security and transport, those are really mechanisms of the host and the environment. They're not HostBridge specific. HostBridge doesn't care about transport. We're running inside of CICS, and so whether you secure the channel or don't secure the channel, whether you use TLS or not, those are all decisions at the CICS and host level. They're not actually HostBridge decisions at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If you're done, Eric, I have a couple of questions.
Sure. I'll let you go, and I got a couple more after that. Go right ahead.
The example screen that you showed where you were looking up the SSN prefix within Excel, was that actually launching CICS programs behind the scenes, or was that reading the vSAN file directly?
That was reading the vSAN file directly.
Okay, perfect, because that's what we're looking to do. We don't have any CICS programs, but we need to be able to share data from the mainframe through a web service to a distributed system.
Yep.
So that would be along that line.
And that's exactly right. The only thing that exists in this example is just I have a web service that I've created on the host written in JavaScript that is actually reading the vSAN file directly. And so there's no programs involved whatsoever other than HostBridge.
Okay. And then this is going to be an incredibly stupid question, but I just need to confirm it. When our CICS region goes down for nightly processing, that web service is no longer available to HostBridge, correct?
That's right, because we're running inside of CICS.
Okay.
Now, from a configuration perspective, though, it doesn't have to be that way. And let me tell you what I mean by that. HostBridge does not have to live in the same region as your applications. And many of our customers will bring up the regions dedicated to certain specific functions, like they have something called a TOR, which is a terminal owning region, and an AOR, application owning region, and an FOR, file owning region. Well, they bring up something they call a WOR, a web owning region, where they install HostBridge. So HostBridge can actually live in that region and reach across and run applications in the other regions. Okay, now that means that the HostBridge region doesn't have to come down for maintenance, right? Only your application regions do. So it is possible that you could create services that could still be responsive when your other regions were down. Now the response are going to be data not available, right? But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be that the web service doesn't exist anymore. The web service can give back a response that the application can understand that says, well, I'm under maintenance right now. So HostBridge can keep up and keep going even though you're providing maintenance on your applications.
Okay, so we're actually bringing the region down so that we can bring the files down so our batch processing can have exclusive rights to those files to do updating.
Yep.
So we could keep that HostBridge region up, and if the file
do whatever you normally do.
Yeah, was currently being, blocked for update, the web service would just come back with an error saying, data unavailable.
Yeah,
whatever
you would have to program into the web service, to look for the error that says it was unable to execute the transaction. And when it encountered that error, you could respond back with whatever message is appropriate back to the consuming client, and they can present the message back to the user.
So then in 10 minutes when the file is released and is available again, that web service, that HostBridge web service, would be able to access the file again.
Yep. Every single time a request would come in, HostBridge service would try to access the transaction. If it's not available, it would generate the appropriate message, and when it becomes available, it would go ahead and execute the transactions.
So then does that file have to be allocated to that HostBridge CICS region?
No.
No?
No. We're running. It's a straightforward CICS configuration. It's called multi-region operation, MRO, and we're actually shipping requests to the remote region. And when that remote region is either unavailable or refusing the request, then my region can go ahead and do it. The files and applications and data are actually allocated in the remote region, not in the HostBridge region at all. So when that region goes down, it's okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hey James, this is Gary Peterson.
Yes.
I'm also up here in Egan with Melissa there. I have a question. Is it possible to have two regions and one region basically be like a read-only, and while the other TOR or whatever is actually doing some updating? Has a customer ever done that?
The questions you're asking, these are all CICS configuration and about your application itself. It's not really a HostBridge issue, if you know what I mean. HostBridge, if the region HostBridge is up and running, is available, then HostBridge can do the appropriate test to make sure that your application data is available and readable. Now, if you guys have the ability to configure a CICS region with read-only data before you start your batch process, then HostBridge could access it. And it could use that as a backup. So it could try to do the primary one where it normally does update first, and if it's refused there, it could fall over and try to do the one on the read-only version. But you would have to have the mechanism set up in CICS to have a read-only and your update regions defined and update ready. It's not really a HostBridge issue as such.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Eric again. Yeah, this is Eric again. So you said that there's an engine that's basically running in the CICS region, right? JavaScript engine. So what flavors of JavaScript does that support? What versions?
I can get you that. I want to say 1.8, but I can't remember actually what it is. The name of the code name for the engine was SpiderMonkey, and the SpiderMonkey was one of the Mozilla JavaScript engines. So if you look up what code base is for SpiderMonkey, that's going to be what we support. I can't remember the version number.
Do you know, does it support like ES5, ES6?
It's okay. I think it's ES5. I don't believe it's ES6. But remember, this is a server-side JavaScript engine. A lot of those things that you're talking about when you talk about ES5, ES6 are going to be more on the client side, not a server-side functionality. A lot of things related to DOM and to other client-side features. The core JavaScript hasn't really changed all that much, even from ES5 to ES6. It's really the client features that evolve, that have changed a lot over time. I rarely, in fact, I can't remember the last time that I've taken JavaScript off the internet and pasted it into HostBridge and compiled it and it didn't work. It just does.
Okay, and then my last question is, when you were showing your Eclipse IDE, is that a HostBridge Eclipse IDE, or is that a plugin for? Just a plugin. Just a plugin for Eclipse. So you're able to just pull whatever version of Eclipse you'd like, as long as it's relatively current, and you install our plugin like you install anybody else's plugin, and you get the functionality. So you guys supporting Oxygen right now? Eclipse Oxygen?
Oxygen is, I have the beta version of the plugin for Oxygen in-house right now. I think the one prior to that is the one I'm on, and I can't remember which one that is right now, actually.
Neon.
Neon, yeah. Neon is what I'm using right now. So I have the beta in my inbox that I haven't tested yet for the plug-in for Oxygen. So we'll be supporting Oxygen pretty quick.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. No other questions? That was good. You see if I can, and of course, whenever I go to do my jump back onto my slides, because I got 2 or 3 more slides you have to do it, it throws it on the wrong screen. So let me move screens. You know, there's nothing special about putting a HostBridge on your host. I mean, like I said before, we're just a standard CICS application. However, if you want to use the zip engines and you want to be able to offload HostBridge off the general processor onto the zip engine, we do have a few requirements you have to have in place. But almost all of HostBridge's processing runs on the zip. Now, that doesn't mean your code runs on the zip. And what I mean by your code, I don't mean your applications will run on the zip, but all of our code, the JavaScript you write will run on the zip. All of that will run on the zip, but IBM's code and your code still runs on the GP, and that's by license with IBM. So to sum up, I mean, why would you use HostBridge? If you've got visual transactions that you need to integrate with the outside world, you know, we're about your only choice. Not only were you the best choice, we're about the only choice. We can reach in and access any of the applications and data running inside of CICS. We've done very complex applications, hundreds of screens in some cases. Specifically up in Egan, they're doing thousands of screens in a single web service request. If you need to access a transaction in one region, walk partway through it, leave that transaction in flight, launch another transaction, walk partway through it, pull data out of both, feed data from one transaction to the other transaction, get data out of DB2 or VSAM, and do that all in a single web service, we can do that. We install quickly. Some of our competitors take days to install and weeks to be able to produce your first web service. That's not true with HostBridge. We're able to do this very quickly. You're able to begin writing real web services hours after HostBridge is installed. There's no setup that you have to do. There's no prep work you have to do. You just sit down and start exploring your applications and writing your services. No changes to your existing environment. You don't have to change your host at all. You don't have to change any of your applications at all. We scale to your environment, from a few hundred transactions a day to tens of millions of transactions a day. HostBridge scales with your mainframe, your CICS. And you don't have to install HostBridge in your middle tier. All you have to do is be able to make a standard web service call out of your application servers to HostBridge, and you can talk to HostBridge and get your data. And whatever data format you want, whether it be XML, JSON, RESTful, it's your choice. Okay, well, I want to say thank you to everybody, and just as a note on how this goes, if you guys are interested in more information, we can do private demos and talk specifically about your environments. And if you decide to proceed, we can do a proof of concept and actually put HostBridge in your environment and show you how we can interact with your transactions and be able to do that very quickly and show you how easy it is to develop and create web services for your environment.
We do offer free proof of concepts with our software. So for US-based clients, we'll come on site for a 3 to 5 day pilot application workshop, and that's where we come on site and we'll write 2 or 3 automation scripts that automate a business process with your application, so you can actually see how fast you can do this. Look over James' shoulder or whoever engineer that comes out, learn a lot, and again, see it working with your applications and how incredibly fast you can write these services. So if you're interested in that, again, just let us know. We'll be glad to coordinate that and follow up.